everyone. Welcome to the Sackhoff Show. I am your host, Katee Sackhoff. Happy Tuesday. You guys, I am so excited for this episode. Before we get into that, I wanted to do a really quick announcement to let you all know that you need to sign up for the audio and make sure that you follow me on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts so you get announcements because there's a lot coming. I'm going to talk about my convention schedule a little bit afterwards, so stick around for the Hindsight. This week's episode, I'm really excited for this. You know, when I first started a podcast and was thinking about the people that I wanted on, this is someone that I desperately wanted to talk to, but I was a little intimidated. This week's guest is none other than Mike Flanagan. You guys, if you don't know who Mike Flanagan is, I mean, I met him during Oculus, but The Haunting of Hill House, The Fall of the House of Usher, Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, I could go on and on and on. He is the man behind horror on streaming these days, and he is absolutely wonderful. I was impressed with him when I first met him back, I think in 2012. 2010, something like that, a long time ago. And we have been trying to work together ever since. It hasn't happened, but I pretty much bribe him in this. So, you know, that could probably happen pretty soon. But I'm going to get out of your way because this is a phenomenal, phenomenal episode. You guys, we talk about work. We talk about how the business is changing. We talk about his personal life and his struggles with alcoholism. And we really go deep on this one. And this is a really beautiful conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. And I will see you guys afterwards for the Hindsight. Here is Mike Flanagan. First of all, I'm really excited for this interview. When I started the show and I was thinking about who I would have on, you were one of the people I wanted to have on because there are certain people whose brains I want to get inside for a second because it feels exhausting. And so to sit down with you is such a gift. And I can't wait for the audience to get to know you a little bit better. You guys, I'm sitting down with Mike Flanagan, jack of all trades, who has been like, you know, taking the business by storm for the last 15 years, something like that. And you're unstoppable. Do you pinch yourself on a daily basis?
Yeah, I do. You know, when we met, which is kind of at the very beginning of my career, all of what I had kind of hoped for and aspired for in my wildest dreams in this business, that felt so kind of unreachable. You know, we were talking about this just a little bit.
Yeah.
When you kind of have to look around and say like, oh my God, this is real.
Yeah.
This dream has kind of manifested in a very real way. Yeah, I spend an enormous amount of time taking stock and feeling like an absolute imposter, you know, like the feeling like none of this is real, none of it is going to stay, you know? And yeah, it's a very weird feeling of satisfaction and terror. Yeah.
That imposter syndrome, though, is super real.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people feel that in
Yes.
this industry. Do you still feel that way?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so weird. I felt really weird about it, but the more I met more and more of my heroes in the business, it was one of the most common things people would confess to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who have won numerous Academy Awards and made, you know, modern classics, you know, still show up on set feeling like any minute now everybody's going to figure out that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm making it up. And I found that really comforting.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I've developed a lot of confidence in certain aspects of what I do and in people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And which is one of the reasons why I work with a lot of people over and over again.
Yeah.
Is that where I think, you know, if I'm worried that I'm going to fall down, at least I can trust that it's like, oh no, I trust them.
You're around a bunch of people that can like pick you up if you need it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you do, but yes, I get it.
Oh, thank you.
I get it. I want to go back to like you as a kid.
Yeah.
Because it feels to me like you are living so much of a dream. When you were a kid, did you see this for yourself? were you always interested in writing and directing, or did it come to you later in life?
It was what I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
I remember I was watching Jaws I think it was in fourth grade. And I had realized for the first time, I'd seen the movie like a dozen times at that point in my life, just because I really thought it was fun. And I used to show my friends the movie. But I remember watching it and some penny dropping where I saw the filmmaking and became aware of the shot composition and the editing and started to kind of unpack the movie a little bit. And from that moment on, it was all I ever wanted to do. And I started making movies in the backyard with my friends, with VHS camcorders. And I was instantly addicted to it. I've never had another feeling like it in my life to this day.
Really?
Of sitting down and taking something that you can see clearly in your head and taking it out of your head and putting it out there.
Yeah.
But doing it with a bunch of other people who all of a sudden start to kind of harmonize and add their own imagination to it. It's a profoundly cool feeling to then sit back together and look at this thing that you've made.
Yeah.
And so I kind of announced to everybody before I made it to middle school that I wanted to make movies. and my parents were like, that's nice. But my dad was career military.
Yeah.
You know, my mom was a full-time mother and a medical office manager. And they very reasonably said, that's great. And we think it's an awesome hobby. But as I got older, they're like, you have to start looking for a real job.
You're going to go to college, right?
Yeah.
And then a real job.
Yeah. And then this will be a fun thing you do, but this isn't a career. But it's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. And so there are a lot of times where, you know, you get pulled into the bullshit of it every day. Like you get pulled into the budgetary arguments and the unexpected stuff that pops up. And
the reality of the industry that is not the fun romantic side. Exactly.
And you get swept away in that stuff. And it takes some effort sometimes to remember that it's like, no, you're living in a dream. You're living you're doing the thing that you always wanted to do. And I feel utterly unemployable in any other industry at this point. So, yeah.
So do I. I am not a jack of all trades. And I look at myself sometimes and I'm like, if tomorrow, if the industry was like, we're done with you, I think that I could honestly go, all right, cool. Like, I'll go find something else that brings me joy because there's a lot of things in life that bring me joy. None of them bring me money. They don't. Not at all. So I'm like, okay, those are not realistic career paths for me because there is nothing I am good at that I could make money at other than what I do.
Right.
On a daily basis. When you were a kid and you were making those movies with your friends, did you watch it back and critique it already? Were you doing that already?
Yeah. The feeling I had two feelings every time and immediately when the thing was done. The first was this rush of incredible quiet satisfaction that like, wow, look at this thing that we did. And then the second feeling I always had was, wait, I can do better. Look at what's wrong here. Look at what's wrong here. Look at what's wrong here. And this sense of, okay, everybody don't look at that. Let me, I can do better. I can do better. I can do better. And that cycle of kind of immediate contentment followed by self-critique.
By self-critique and then I'll make this better?
Yeah, that's never left me either. And it puts me in a very weird place where I can't watch things that I've made.
Are you ever satisfied?
I've come close here and there, but no. And one of I always am, when a thing comes out, I've been lucky enough that I'm always into another thing.
Yeah.
And it prevents me from dwelling on the finished thing, which I think is a kind of emotional survival mechanism. It's a tick I have where it's like I have to get the next thing going.
You're like a shark. Gotta keep moving.
Gotta keep moving.
Gotta keep moving.
Well, and if the thing that is about to come out if it really doesn't work and that could stop this whole career, in its tracks, I better have the next thing going because they can't
Just
stop
in
me
case.
if I'm already in prep.
My manager always said that. He always said, like, the goal is not to have one movie in the can. The goal for you as an actress is to have 3 projects in the can.
Yeah.
Because if 2 of them fail, but 1 succeeds, nobody judges you based on your failures. They'll
Right.
judge you on the thing that succeeded. And so he's like, you never want to have just one thing done.
Yeah.
That was always in the back of my mind. Always. So it's very similar in the, I don't know if that's like a fear or if it's a reality actually, but we both have the same, that same thing.
Do you have, you don't stand still either, you're perpetual motion,
Yeah.
Do you have that anxiety kind of when you do hit those pockets in between things where you just feel like if I don't find a direction to channel this momentum into, I'm going to explode? Like, how does that manifest for you?
So if I have too much downtime, I get intense anxiety that the industry is done with me.
Yeah.
That was it. That was a great run. I start to plan retirement. I start talking to my husband about how, maybe we should invest in that winery. Like I start planning out. I map out what the next chapter looks like in my downtime. Because I don't want to be like blindsided by it,
right?
And then of course I'll get a phone call and they're like, hey, come do this job, or what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh man, I had one foot in. I had one foot into that other life, and you pulled me back. Because I do, I think that's the thing that surprises people about this industry, and you touched on it before, that so many people in this industry are the most insecure people I've ever met. And not insecure in who they are as a person, but insecure in their success and that imposter syndrome. Because we are also acutely aware that there's always someone behind you that can do it.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many talented people that are just one opportunity away from taking your place.
Scott Derrickson put something up on social media this week that was just no context. He just put up a tweet that was like, just for those of you who are wanting to make a living in this industry, understand that the industry is designed to cycle you out.
Yeah.
And accept that right away, and then realize that it's on you to give them a reason not to cycle you out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a constant requirement.
Constant.
And I was like, wow, that's so well put. And kind of crystallizes this feeling that you get, because it really is, at least for me, and I'd be curious how it feels for you, because you've reached these beautiful heights. There never was a moment where I looked around and said, I did it.
Yeah.
That feeling just doesn't really happen. You glimpse it at times where you feel like, oh no, I've achieved the goal I set out, or I never would have imagined being in this wonderful place that I'm finding myself in. But there's kind of never that, ta-da, you did it moment. There's constantly this sense of like, no, I've got a foothold on something, and I need to
hold on to it.
I need to hold on very tight. Yeah.
That, because I had mentioned that to you before, like, when I got Mandalorian and was on set and was proud of my performance, which I think it didn't matter what anyone else thought, I was proud of my performance, and I know that John was. So that was the thing. When I got there, I was like, this is bigger. This is a bigger mountain than I ever thought I would climb. I'd never stepped up and into something that was greater than the career that I'd amassed. I'd always been on a very steady ladder. Like, I'm just over here climbing the ladder, and was very comfortable in that because it's predictable. And then to step into this juggernaut was like, oh, I never thought I would do anything like this in my career. So at that point, I had to reevaluate what the next step was, because I never thought I'd get to that place, because it was a place that I'd never imagined, but I was not satisfied. It just made me want more, because I know that the more life experience I have, the more capable I am of actually being really great at this. And the industry is a weird thing where, like, the more life experience you get, you actually start to work less. And so it's like, I look back and I'm like, God, if I could have done that role now with the life experience I have now, it could have been so different. Oh my God. So I don't know. I immediately start to think, what do I do next? What's next?
Yeah. And that hunger, I don't think that ever lets go.
Yeah.
I really connect with what you're saying about if you could reapproach work you've done now, kind of with the experience that you have and with the perspective that you have. That's such a kind of overwhelming feeling, I think. And I hear it from a lot of people who have been lucky enough to keep working.
Yeah.
That it's like they revisit their early work and they're like, oh, if I could do that again, wow.
Do you do that?
So I just had it happen to me with Oculus.
Really?
Yeah, which I hadn't seen in so long. Because typically, by the time I'm lucky enough when I get to work that I edit my own stuff.
Are you editing as you go along?
Yeah. So by the time I'm really done with a thing, I've seen it hundreds of times, and to the point that I can't see it at all anymore. It's like sitting an inch away from a wall.
Yeah.
And so when I finish final color review or like a DCP review and I'm seeing the final product, sometimes months before it's actually released, that to me is like, I'm done. I don't need to look at this again. And like, I don't watch the shows. Never. I get very kind of flinchy about looking back at them. And it's like, nope, I've seen it.
Do you think it's because you would want to change something that you can't change anymore?
Yeah, I do. And I feel this kind of wall go up between me and the work. And I try very hard to move fully into the next thing and focus on that. And so when a show airs, I don't watch it. And I'm excited that other people are catching up. But it's like, no, I saw it. But Oculus, they just did this 10th anniversary screening in New Orleans. And it was in a theater with an audience, and I was like, that's kind of neat. I'm so far removed from this project now. It'd be really neat to see that with an audience again.
Because we watched it at TIFF, right?
Yes, we watched it at Toronto.
One time, right?
Yes.
Right, the Toronto International Film Festival, for people that don't know.
And we sold it there.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So that was an amazing screening.
Yeah.
And that to me was that's how I remember Oculus,
What a great way to remember it, though.
Yeah.
Like, you almost don't want to watch it again, you're saying.
But I was like, this is neat. And it's with a bunch of people now it was a horror film festival and it's like, this is one of those movies that they're audience members who are adults who are like, I saw this when I was a kid. And I'm like, oh my God. Come on.
It's such a weird moment.
Oh, it's really weird. And I was like, okay, well, this is a good way to watch it. And so I sat through it and instantaneously was kind of elated to see it. And I had this really cool sense of remembering, but then, oh man, there were lines in the script and edits and stuff where I was just like, oh, no, dude, no, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say that part out loud. That's an inside part. You had them say the inside part outside, Oh, what are you doing with that cut? You needed to let that go another 12 frames, or like, oh man, you could have gotten out of this scene halfway through it. Like, why are you doing this? And so I kind of started slouching in my chair as it played, but the audience was fully engaged.
Yeah.
And when the movie ended, I was like, wow, I'm looking at, and I realized I'm looking at a version of myself, that I don't have any contact with anymore.
Well, it's not you anymore.
No, it's a completely different person. And it makes me think about, who we are when we make these things and how it's true of the actors, it's true of the department heads, how much of ourselves in that moment, wherever we are in our lives, we bring with us and pour into it, And so for everybody else on screen, it was really neat for me to see them back then, but I was super embarrassed to see me, and I had the weirdest Q&A because I was so proud of it, but also so like, I'm sorry, guys.
Were you slightly embarrassed by?
I was embarrassed by certain things where now I'm like, oh, I know better now. I know I would have done it very differently. Yeah. And then it makes me feel like, oh, did I let the actors down? Did I let the? But then I'm like, it was my first movie, and then at the end of the day, to sit back and be like, this is a good movie, and look how the audience is reacting. And what it did for me was it made me, this is why I reached out when we were texting to you. It made me very grateful for and impressed by the work you guys were doing. And it was like, oh my God, I love Katee's work in this. What an incredible performance. Or I was looking at Annalise Basso, who now I know as an adult, and was like, oh, right.
She's 14.
She was a baby.
She's a baby.
And I just worked with Karen Gillan again for the first time since then.
Yes.
And Annalise was there. And we were realizing that Annalise is older now than Karen was when she played older Annalise.
Of course.
And that stuff just really kind of knocks me out. But
yeah,
I got weirdly embarrassed by it, but also it was such a cool thing to see.
Yeah.
And it's made me curious to revisit a lot of the other stuff I haven't seen in a long time. But I think I'm going to wait and see them with my kids when they're old enough.
Such a cool moment.
Yeah.
That's so cool. There's so much I remember about Oculus. I remember when we were having our first conversation ever about the script. I'd read the script. And my biggest concern in the moment, that first thing I needed to talk to you about was because, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the children were written about 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And I was like, how do I strangle that young of a child? I was really concerned because I'd never played a mom before.
Right.
And then I'm just going to fresh out of the gate play a mom for the first time and try to murder my children. I was like, well, I guess we're going for it. But so I was so relieved when you said, oh, no, we're going to cast like 12 and 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, oh, thank God.
It's funny on the other side of parenthood, looking at a story like that, because that's something else that struck me watching that movie. Was I didn't have experience as a parent when I was writing that, and looking at it now, that's also from a time where a lot of the stuff that I was writing had really bleak endings, and very hopeless endings, and it pivots right after that, and kind of everything I've done since then doesn't have that.
Is that because of Kate?
I think in a lot of ways it is.
Yeah.
And it's because it's because of family. It's, when Kate and I got together, my outlook changed a lot.
Yeah.
And as, we had kids of our own and the kids started growing up, it started to become more important for me because someday they're going to interrogate our work, right?
Yeah.
Like someday we're going to be gone. And if they want to revisit us in an interesting way, they have all this work that they can look at. And I never wanted them to come revisit those things and be left on a note of hopelessness. And so it's become incredibly important to me that no matter how dark a story gets, there's always hope and forgiveness and empathy at the end. Yeah. To the point that I'll get some complaints in reviews and stuff about like, oh, but then he pulled the punch.
The happiness.
The happy ending. And it's like, no, this is more important than that.
Intentional.
Yeah.
When you were writing those type of projects, like with these bleak endings, were you in a depressive state at that point?
I was. And in ways that I wasn't really conscious of too. I'm 6 years sober now. And a lot of the way that I interacted with alcohol, especially before my career had taken off, and then in the early days of my career, when a lot of the anxiety and fear about whether this career could go away would be self-medicated with booze. I was ingesting so much of this depressant all the time. It's amazing I wasn't more depressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was definitely in a very different place emotionally before my career kind of found its feet. But I was in a very different place personally. And it wasn't kind of until I had real stability in my marriage and in my relationships. I always used to think like, oh, if I can get stability in my career, then I can achieve stability in my relationships. And it was kind of the other way around. It was when your relationship is stable or when you're in the right relationship, everything else around it tends to stabilize, or you don't mind so much the other instability, your priorities change. So yeah. I
say this all the time that like when I met my husband, that I thought that he was the best person I'd ever met in my life. He literally, I would talk to people about him and just be like, he's going to make some girl really happy because he was 10 years younger than me. And I never thought that he was like my type, like my thing, you know? Like my type was always very predictable. Like it was the opposite. It was not him. And the moment he loved me, I became enough. Because I was like, wow, the person I think is the best person in the world thinks I'm enough. And I immediately got so just comfortable in my own skin for the first time in my life. I'd never felt so just like stable. And it freed me up in so many ways with my career.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it before. I always just thought that was life being like tumultuous and all over the place and drinking too much and, you know, like crying all the time in your relationships. Like I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's not. What was the catalyst for wanting to get sober?
Oh, well, it became clear that I was not a good drinker, you know, and if I hadn't changed I could, one of the things that has become part of my daily kind of workout as a writer is gaming out plot and story based on character, based on who someone is, you know, and it became very clear to me kind of if I played the tape out, that it was like, if I don't make a change with how I relate to alcohol, it could cost me my career, it could cost me my marriage, it could cost me everything. And it was right before my daughter was born. And this idea kind of came in where it was like, what if my daughter never knows me drunk? What if that's just for her whole life? That's just something that she never sees. Because I was getting to a place where I felt like this version of me that would emerge if I drank enough was a completely different person. And that this person hated me.
And did you drink to that place all the time?
Not all the time. It would be one time out of 10, you know, I would go too far.
Okay.
But I did not have a stop button. Like if I started, I just could not stop. Like I would just keep going.
Really?
And for a lot of times that was fun, I thought. And fine. And then there would be one time out of 10 where I was a total asshole.
Yeah.
And I would have to kind of do the apology tour. Or I'd be like, wow, I really mortified myself.
Wow.
But that one time out of 10 became more and more frequent. Yeah. And the apology tours became more and more kind of humiliating and potentially very damaging. And Kate, you know, who was enormously patient with me during this period, I could see that that this was not going to last forever and shouldn't, because I was forcing her to tolerate things. There's no reason she ever should have had to. And we were both, you know, our own versions of messes in our youth. And one of the things I love about my marriage is that we've both changed and helped each other to change in really positive ways.
Yeah.
But she helped me through a huge one with this and did it with love. And so I told myself a bunch of things. I said first, like, well, I need to quit smoking. You know, that was the first thing.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I'm going to quit smoking, I can only do that if I quit drinking, because I have one drink and I'm going to like Chris Angel, I will materialize a cigarette from behind somebody's ear.
I was a good smoker. We were good smokers.
We were good smoking buddies for a minute there. God, you guys quit kind of right at the end of Oculus, right?
I did. Well, that's when I started quitting.
Okay.
I quit many times before I actually quit.
I remember we would smoke together, and Gillen was smoking then too.
He was.
And then I remember both of you toward the end of it were like, nope. And I was like, damn it. And I was back out there like by myself.
Yourself?
Yeah. So I rationalized it initially as I'm going to give up drinking just long enough to give up smoking. And then I was in such denial about what my real problem was. And it was like, no, the drinking is the problem.
Right.
And I was able to get rid of both. And it's funny, the only one I miss is the smoking.
Do you white knuckle smoking?
I did. I tried all sorts of stuff. I tried the gum, I tried the patches, I tried the pills. Like I tried all sorts of stuff.
Me too.
And the only thing that really worked was I completely gave up alcohol, and then I white knuckled it, and I was unbearable for about a month.
Yeah.
I was just an asshat. And then it got out of my system, And that was the one that I still kind of pined for. And to this day, I'll have dreams where I smoke in my dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
But I don't miss the alcohol at all. And I certainly don't miss kind of who I was in the worst throes of that.
Yeah.
And it makes me so happy that my daughter never met that version of me, never will.
Well, your son won't remember it.
No. My oldest son, who's 13, he would remember a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's something that is also a special part of our relationship, because I got to, when I tell him that I'm sober, you know, he in the very back of his developmental mind would remember those times, because he would say it sometimes. He's like, well, yeah, sometimes your voice changes, you know, and for a kid to say that to you, it's just like, oh my God.
Right. Like he notices the physical changes in you. He doesn't necessarily understand why.
Right.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And then, you know, Kate got sober shortly after that herself.
I was going to ask you if Kate was still drinking.
She was for the first year or so, and that was fine.
Did Kate have a problem? I mean, that may not be your story to tell, but...
Yeah, I'm sure she wouldn't mind. Yeah, she had a different problem with it, and she was relying on it in different ways. And by that point, I had stopped, but had told her, like, no, you keep doing whatever you want to do. I could see some of the issues, and when you're kind of on the other side of sobriety, you can really see. Really? Yeah, it's a very strange thing when you see it in someone else.
What are some of the things, not necessarily related to Kate, but what are some of those things that you see in people that drink?
Well, one of the most fascinating things to me...
Asking for a friend, like...
You can very much identify the difference between a person who doesn't have an issue drinking and can drink healthily, and someone who does, and you can see it in the way they behave, how quickly their personality will shift. Yeah, and the most fascinating thing for me was parties, because I would say early on, I was like, I'm scared of sobriety because I have social anxiety.
Yeah. I'm a very good wallflower. It's why I dabbled with cocaine in my youth.
Sure.
Because it got me off the wall.
It gets you off the wall. And you start to feel like you need that. You need something to get you off the wall and to get you to be personable and charming and funny. And
because that's who you were during Oculus to me. You always seemed, when we were drinking at night, more bubbly, but your energy was, you are much, and yes, of course, that's you were aging. There's a calmness in that, but there was a part of you that felt like a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster.
Yes, very much. Very much.
Yeah.
And I believed that when I would drink, I would get the bubbly, I would get funnier, you know, and be more fun for other people to be around. And I know now that that was just flatly untrue. And that all this anxiety I had about how can I function at a party if it's just me? Yeah. It's so much better. And when I go to a party, Kate and I talked about it after she kind of got sober. She was like, wow, this is like a superpower, because you watch everybody else and it doesn't take long at all before the whole thing starts to unravel. Yeah. And people think that they're being super charming and funny, but they're not. Yeah. And it's just that everybody else is slightly altered. Yeah. And if you're not, you kind of like, we don't stay at parties past 10.
Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah.
And we have a great time and we visit with our friends, and then you feel the tide.
And then you're ready to go.
And you're ready to go. And you go home and you go to bed and you wake up the next morning feeling great. Yeah. And there's none of this, like, I used to have 2-day hangovers, you know? God. And I try to remember functioning at work when I would peel myself out of bed and chug mouthwash so that I wasn't stinking when I got to work, and not feeling like I was back to full power for 48 hours. Yeah.
And then you drink again.
Then you drink again. As soon as you're back to full power, you're like, I'm good to go.
You're good to go.
So what I see with people, you know, I can spot the people whose personality changes. Yeah. And who kind of emerge as a version of themselves that I do not recognize from their sober lives. Yeah. And that's the one that I relate to the most. So that one, to me, I'm like, that's where it's scary. Yeah. Otherwise, there are other people I you know, who drink and become looser, funnier versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And they're fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can see the difference, and I can say, I was never like you. I thought I was, and I wanted to be, but I wasn't.
I have friends, one of my closest girlfriends doesn't have a shutoff valve.
Mm-hmm.
She like doesn't have that thing. And I remember when we were younger and we would drink together and like we'd get like through one bottle of wine together and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. And she'd be like, let's open another bottle. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And till this day has that same thing. The thing that I've noticed about myself as I've gotten older is I do drink every day. It's like a glass or two of wine.
Sure.
But I am not as good of a mother when I've had 2 glasses of wine the next day. I'm a little short. I'm not short with my kid. My kid's 2.5. I'm not short with her. I just have less patience for a 2.5-year-old because I want her to be 10. You know what I mean? Like I want her to be rational and she's not rational. And thank God she's not rational. But so I find myself just more tired. And so I've started drinking non-alcoholic wine because I still like having, that thing at night because I find that it does relax me. But the older I get, the more I'm like, well, that's not good either, And I've never been the person that like just kept drinking.
Right.
I've always known 2.5, 3 glasses of wine, that's my thing. Because if I go past that, I'm going to feel like shit tomorrow. So I've never been the person that did that often. But I do find the older I get and the longer I'm a mother, the more sobriety or bouts of sobriety, times of sobriety, week sobriety or whatever it is, that it's more enticing to me purely just because I want to be a better mom.
Sure.
And I want to be less tired.
And and bouts of sobriety, certainly don't have to be related to a problem. It can just be like exactly what you said. It just makes me more present. It's a good time to do that.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the non-alcoholic wine, just to feel that kind of, I've got the glass in my hand.
They found a good one.
Oh yeah?
They found a good one that it's called Misty Cliffs.
Misty Cliffs.
Yeah. It's the only one, don't smell it.
Okay.
Because it smells like cat piss. But it's the only non-alcoholic wine that I and they have ever drank that actually tastes like real wine and not just juice.
Yeah, that kind of vinegary juice.
Yeah, no, it literally tastes like wine. And you're like, all right, I could do this. I'm
going to look for that. We've gotten very into the mocktail scene.
Oh, yeah. Huge business.
Oh, huge business.
Huge business.
And it's becoming, I think this generation especially, it's becoming preferable for a lot of them, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
That rebelling is like
not drinking.
Clean living. Yeah.
Well, because I think that there is so much research at this point that tells us that alcohol is not good for us.
Right. It's a poison.
It is a poison. And so I think that for the people that are thinking about longevity, I think it is a natural thing to think about. Like, how do I remove this from my life? Like, I wouldn't drink poison every day just for shits and giggles.
Right.
Yeah.
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 It's a very interesting thing to look back at for me because that roller coaster you describe, having been on it for so long and then to be off of it, the stability that comes with that has also really informed a lot of the work that I do and made me more aware of the other addictive kind of behaviors in my life.
Do you have other things you're addicted to?
Absolutely. We're sitting, as we're recording this, we're sitting in my screening room surrounded by movie props.
What's the one that you love the most?
Oh, Jesus. In here? Oh, man. Probably my favorites in this room are, in the corner is Raccacoonie from Everything Everywhere All at Once. And he's animatronic. He just looks like a raccoon.
Oh my God.
He's really cool. And then
it's so cool.
I've got one of the bats from The Natural, which is one of my favorite movies growing up.
It's one of the best movies.
I love that movie.
God, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
They don't make movies like that anymore.
They really don't. But this is another addiction I have. And it's become kind of, surrounding myself with artifacts from movies that not only that I love now, but movies from my childhood especially.
Yeah. And movies that you have made.
Yeah. And then a lot of things in here are from things I've made. But that's an addiction. Work is an addiction for me, And I have a similar feeling when you talked about like not having the stop valve, that was my issue. And that sense of like, what do you mean everybody's done? What does that mean?
Yeah.
You drink until you pass out.
Yeah.
Is how I would do it. And this idea of like, oh, I'm done. I can stop. I'm good. I can go to bed. That just never happened for me.
Yeah.
I have that feeling with work, you know?
I was going to ask you when you sleep.
Not often.
Because
And
you have so many things that you've accomplished that most people, it would take a lifetime to write one of them. And you do it so quickly, so proficiently. And you also sleep and have children. I don't understand where you find that time.
I haven't slept very well, probably since we met, you know.
I vaguely remember you had sleep issues.
Yeah, I did. And I still do. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and write, you know, or at least scribble something down. I keep a notepad by the bed. And, you know, a lot of the sleep issues I had back then too were alcohol related because I would booze myself to sleep. But yeah, there's a compulsion to keep working. There's an allergy to stillness, which is funny because that's my favorite thing to find on a set, you know?
Stillness.
By
yourself,
love
alone?
It. Yeah. And to find a moment in between setups or on a set after everyone's gone, you know, and to just kind of be in the quiet of this invented world that's kind of only half put together.
That's beautiful, though.
It's really gorgeous.
Because it's out of your imagination, too. It's like living in a dream.
And it's neat it's like a puppet without a hand in it. It's when you see a set after the cast and crew have left and kind of just enough light is on it so that you can safely move around in there. But everything's kind of left waiting to be filled again. And, you know, the equipment's on the floor and the lights are cold and, you know, the marks are still on the ground from where people were doing their scene, and that'll be pulled up tomorrow. And it's quiet because the sound stages are quiet, or the location you're at has been this bustling activity all day, and now that's quiet. And it's a really profoundly peaceful place to find yourself and to kind of to sit in this moment in between the work. And that's some of the most relaxing time that I have in my life. You know, at home, I'm very lucky that, you know, Kate and I work together on so much that she fully understands if I need to go right.
Yeah.
Or that it's like, yes, we're going to divvy up, you know, the balance between parenting and time for just us as a couple and recreation, because I try to watch a movie every day. Which I feel like is part of my job, but also part of just loving cinema and finding a balance with that. I think when you have a partner it's essential that you have a partner who understands what you do, even if they don't do the same thing or work in the same industry. Because I think the industry we work in is so crazy. I can't imagine sustaining a relationship with someone who didn't understand what it was, you know?
Or support you in that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I've dated people in the industry that did not support at all. And that is finding a person who understands you, but also understands, you know, what the industry requires of you. And then also understands how you fill your cup, you know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, doesn't make you feel guilty about that. That's huge. Yeah.
And not even within the industry, to your point, not necessarily common.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been able to come up with a rhythm where I can work on a project and write it. And if I hit the littlest bit of resistance or writer's block, I can pivot to another project.
Yeah.
And work on that until it kind of unsticks. And that's the only thing that kind of makes any of this sustainable, is that I've only recently gotten to the point where I'm tired and kind of looking around and saying, what I'd rather do with my time is get an extra day with my kids and you know, go somewhere with them and kind of create an experience together that's just for us, and I can work less.
Is that presenting challenges within the industry now?
A little bit. There's a certain amount of expectation of volume, you know, that I'm 1,000% responsible for creating over the years, where we'll get into a thing where we don't say, oh no, we're not available to work on this movie because we have a show. It's like, no, bring it on. And we do them both. That's made my reps very happy. That's made, the momentum of the career work.
Yeah.
But certainly now I'm more interested in being very selective about where I'm going to put the time that isn't going to be spent with my kids or with my family. And I have less of that kind of consuming fire.
Yeah.
And less of a panic where, like, if I don't say yes to this or don't keep this going, that it's all going to fall apart.
Another opportunity won't come up.
Yeah. I took a break last year for the first time.
Novel.
I know. It was crazy. And it helped. There was a strike. So, that helped. But it was the first time in something like 7 years that I wasn't in active prep, production, or post, which usually happen on top of each other. And for several months, I was like, I'm at home and I'm reading books and I'm maintaining a normal kind of relaxed life. And I really liked it. And we traveled, we went on trips.
And you didn't feel an itch?
I did feel an itch.
How did you stop that or squelch that?
For the first couple of weeks and months, it wasn't too bad. It was in the background and I was aware of it, but it was like, no, I'm going to not listen to that. And then it started to get more and more persistent. And about 3 months in, I learned that's about as long as I can go without really actively feeding that. Or I started to become very destabilized and panicked about nothing, like just in a general sense of panic. And Kate saw it kind of as it materialized because I'd become panicked about, like, am I spending enough time with the kids? And she's like, yeah. And it's like, well, am I spending enough, am I taking care of us enough?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Are we good?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you're good. Like, okay, what can I do? What can I do to feel like I'm doing it better? And she's like, you're fine. You're just spinning out a little because you've been out of the work.
You need to work
for a minute.
Yeah.
And you're pointing at, I started doing all these home improvement projects.
Oh my God. So did everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone did.
Yeah. What else are you going to do? And you start just rearranging your environment. And by the time I was having contractors come in to replace the windows,
oh my Lord.
Kate was like, it's enough. Like, you should go back to work.
We picked up and moved. I was like, I'm bored. Let's go.
Let's uproot everything.
We remodeled our house. Everything was gorgeous. We got married in the backyard. I loved our house. We had just put the final plant in the yard. And I went, we should move to Portland. And my husband was like, let's do it. And I was like, great.
Well, that's awesome.
We've been thinking about it as well. But, I had this concern. I was talking with a girlfriend of mine that, because everybody projected it on me.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you worried to move out of California and be away from the industry? Are you scared? And I was like, yeah, it's in the back of my mind, but everything's gone. I'm only 2 hours away and everything's gone to Zoom anyway.
Yeah.
And, all right, we'll see. Life's too short. We'll see what happens. And I realized it's not that the industry has a different perception of me. For all extensive purposes, they still think I live down the street.
Right.
I have a different perception of myself now. I realized that living in Los Angeles, I was constantly like, what should I be doing? What should I be doing with my time? Is there someone I should call? Is there a meeting I should take? What should I do? And now that I'm in Portland, I'm like, all right, so I'll do that stuff in 2 weeks when I fly back to Los Angeles. What am I going to do for the 2 weeks while I'm home?
Right.
I'm going to be present with my family and I'm going to find my joy in different places. And so my perception of myself changed.
Do you find that when you aren't feeling that anxiety about needing to kind of put yourself in front of the industry and you allow that distance and that confident distance, that the industry then tries to grab you harder because you're in Portland, because you're only in town for a couple of days, intermittently? Yeah, I think so. There's, but it's also, I found this confidence in not the right project, right?
Not the right thing, not the this, not the that.
Yeah.
And there's this joke, I don't remember who said it, but it was this thing as actors, we take projects for 3 very clear reasons. It could be one of them or all 3 of them, but one is for the project. Who are you working with? What's the script? One is for the location. Are we shooting in Bali? That sounds great. I'd love to do that. And the other one is just money.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those 3. And some projects are all of them, and some projects are one of them. And I just now weigh every single one of those things when I'm looking at projects. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't check enough boxes.
Yeah.
It doesn't check enough of the 3 or something like that. And it's easier to do that now. It's made me a lot more picky.
It's good for the soul to approach it that way, I think.
Very good for the soul.
Yeah.
You grew up in Salem.
I was born in Salem.
You were born in Salem.
Yeah, I didn't live there very long.
Okay.
But I've always felt very connected to it. And I'd like to think that a lot of my fascination with horror kind of comes out of, falling onto the earth there. But yeah, I'm an East Coaster.
So, because Salem, I know that's sort of like inspired like who you are as as a writer, as a person, like your affinity for horror. But your style of horror, at least in the beginning, was very psychological. Like it wasn't like if I go back and I watch Oculus, it came in a time where like Saw was like #1 movie in the whatever. And just like this, like, this Touristas and all of this like absolutely fucking terrifying shit that like I didn't even want to know human beings could do to each other. Things like that, right?
Right.
And then your style of horror was a very different type of horror. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I think it was. I certainly reacted to more character-driven and emotional horror when I was growing up. And that came from reading Stephen King and reading Stephen King too young.
What's your favorite Stephen King book?
Oh, wow. It's almost an impossible question. I think my favorite, I've favorites.
Yeah.
But the big ones, kind of the early big ones, the Stand, Salem's Lot, It, but I have deep love for like Hearts in Atlantis and The Green Mile. The Life of Chuck is my favorite Stephen King short story of all time. And nobody's read that one yet. But I he formed what I think horror is in a way, because I was too scared to watch horror movies.
Yeah.
So I didn't kind of grow up with the trends, especially in the 80s, that kind of informed the slashers and
they scare the crap out of me. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, it's what's a different kind of horror. And when we were doing Oculus, the industry was very, very much. You point at Saw, Hostel, Touristas. There was this kind of boom of torture-based horror, and human horror, like human behavioral horror. Supernatural horror had kind of fallen out of vogue with the studios at the time.
Because there was no blood.
Yeah, and because it was like ghosts. It sounded quaint, and there are these seasons and cycles in the genre where this always happens. But what's always attracted me to the genre, I love horror that helps us confront truths about ourselves or our society or our natures in a way that's cathartic and encourages us to be braver, and that helps us learn a little about ourselves. And I think that's what the genre can do when it's utilized in its kind of purest form. And it takes something that's universal, which is fear, but if it's done well, my favorite thing I ever hear from people who watch some of the stuff that I do is they say, I hate horror, but I really liked this. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because if we took away the horror elements, will the story still work? Will the characters still work? And will it have something to say? And a lot of horror doesn't need that or aspire to that. And just says, nope, this is a delivery system for a very basic, very kind of instinctive, primitive side of our brain.
Yeah.
That responds to violence and responds to fear in a certain way. And for me, I'm less about that than I am about the heart. And I don't know at what point it occurred to me that I would interact with horror stories that made me cry.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that, that it was like, how do I tap into beauty while operating in a genre that's horrific. And it's a weird alchemy, and sometimes we're less successful than other times, but that's always the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like horror.
Sure.
I don't like being scared like that. I don't, I think the world is scary enough. I think it's just as terrifying to, or more terrifying.
Yeah.
To lose my child, even in Costco.
Yeah.
That terror is more primitive and more real and more relatable than me being impaled by a tree off the back of a truck.
100%. The level of fear, there's something that happens, I think, with parenthood where it's like you spend your whole life worried about what can happen to you.
Yeah.
And then you realize how much scarier it is to imagine what can happen to your child.
Yeah.
And that's a level of horror that, I was cavalier about writing things where kids are in danger.
Yeah.
Before I understood that.
Yeah.
And now I look back at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And even with Oculus, the opening scenes,
yeah.
these kids being chased and he puts a gun in their face. And I, on this viewing, just went, whoa. Too much. Too much.
Kids in peril. Too much.
Too much.
Too much, Mike.
But it's true. You become scared of such different things. And when you remove yourself from the equation and are frightened for someone else, especially someone who isn't as equipped with defenses, that's a profound fear. And anyway, I very much relate to that.
Just yesterday, one of the reasons I came to town, this is way too much TMI for you, the audience probably knows everything about me, but as far as this stuff is concerned, but I came into town to have some cysts removed from my breast. They're nothing, I'm fine, but it is what it is. And so I, was having this minor surgery yesterday, and I was awake on the table, and the woman was putting all these shots, numbing me. I couldn't feel anything. There was literally no pain. Pressure, which I hate, but no pain. And I'm laying there, and the whole thing was, it was an hour, and I'm crying. And she literally said, are you feeling this? And I said, no, I'm thinking about how much pain my child is in with their procedures and their treatments, and how I will never understand that pain, that the pain that my child goes through. I was weeping for her. Not myself. I'm fine. I don't feel this. And even if I did, I'm an adult. I can handle it. But the fear that my daughter must feel when she's going through these procedures and things like that is so overwhelming to me. And the way that we've chosen to handle it is explained everything to her. We go to these doctor's appointments, and when they're doing things to her, they want us to distract her. And I'm like, yeah, to a certain extent. But at the same time, she's very aware of what's happening to her. So we talk her through it. She's smart. She's 2.5. She understands what pain is. She understands what needles are. She understands what the stuff is. So we literally say, I walk her through every single thing that's happening to her, because I find that she can rationalize that it's almost over, But that to me, that is terror. That kind of stuff as a parent is terror. And so I identify and relate to your type of horror, because it's the real horror that we experience on a daily basis. It's the relationship horrors. And there's such a place for it.
Well, and it's such a gift that you're giving your daughter by teaching her that she can trust you to tell her the truth about what's happening and not to distract her. You're making her braver when you do that. Or you're taking the bravery that exists in her and you're encouraging that, you're watering it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think on a much less important scale, our storytelling can do that too.
Yeah.
In a much less immediate and less profound way. But I like to think that all of our stories can do that for each other and for strangers.
Well, that's what it is, right? It's the things that go bump in the night, the relationships that you form that get you through those type of things.
Yeah.
That real life things that are terrifying. I love that. Midnight Mass to me was so wonderful, because at the core of it, it was all about relationships.
And that's probably my favorite the projects I've gotten to do in my life. Yeah. And that one has a lot in it that's about my sobriety and relationship to religion and to my parents and to my childhood. And that story, I'm really glad when it resonates with people, because that was one of the times where I felt like all of us who worked on that got to kind of put it out there without interference. It was we were shooting the show during the pandemic, very early during the pandemic. And we were completely isolated in Vancouver, and the borders were closed. And there was this huge seismic shift happening at Netflix at the time. And so we were kind of left alone. And that's never happened to me before or since, where it was like, we just get to make the thing we want to make. But that one, to me, one of the frictions that kind of came afterward was that Netflix said, we thought this was a horror show, and it's not presenting like a horror show.
That must have been really, really difficult.
It was tough. And it was kind of a new regime of executives who weren't part of the greenlight process for the show. And they came in and they said, we thought this was a vampire show. Where are the vampires? I'm like, they'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
But it's not a vampire show. They're a metaphor,
Yeah.
But there was a lot of kind of tension about how to market the show and how to present the show. And can we front load all the horror, into the front? And on that show, I was pretty adamant that we couldn't, because that wasn't what the show was. And that it was like, no, it's just not what we made. And we can't fake it now. We can't kind of jam it all into the front of the show. But yeah, it's interesting to me, stuff that I find the most horrifying, we'll put it out there. And that's the stuff a lot of people will say, like, well, that wasn't horror, or that wasn't horror enough.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because to me, it was. Were you concurrently working on Hill House at that time? Hill
House was done at Midnight Mass. I was working on Bly Manor.
Yeah, Bly Manor. Excuse me.
Yeah. We were shooting.
Hill House was before.
Hill House was. Oh yeah, no. But they're all on top of each other.
Yeah.
In that era. But yeah, we were doing Bly. Bly was shooting while we were scouting and prepping Midnight Mass.
Crazy. So was Midnight Mass your last project you did with Netflix?
No, I did. House of Usher was the last one I did.
Oh God, that's right. The one that like my whole family's in.
Your family's in. the one with Michael Trucco in that show. Holy wow. And Mary, marvelous in that show. But yeah, that was the last one. And that one, we also got away with a lot, because we knew that was the last one. It was like, okay, well, we're all agreeing to kind of make that show what it wants to be. But yeah, we did 5 shows at Netflix.
It's a lot of shows at Netflix.
It's a lot of shows at Netflix.
Yeah.
It ate up a lot of years.
A lot of years. I've done 2 shows at Netflix. And we were also shooting during the pandemic because Trucco came to our house. And we had to sit outside while we had a glass of wine. And we were like, should we even see each other? Like, we're both filming right now. Like, I don't even know. And I was like, I was tested this morning. And he was like, I was tested this morning. I was like, fantastic. We're going to sit outside and have a glass of wine. And working for Netflix is a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
On one hand, during the pandemic, they kept everyone employed.
Yes.
Which was, what a beautiful thing. They really, really helped a lot of people.
Yep.
On another hand, creatively, for me personally, I was unsatisfied. It was complicated. It was difficult. I remember sitting in the marketing meetings for our show and just being like, oh my God, like a fly on the wall in things like that as an executive producer, just being amazed at how they market to people.
Yeah.
And how they change the show depending on the algorithm of what people are watching. And like the way that a show is presented to me on Netflix is not the same way it's presented to my husband.
Yeah.
Very different posters, different everything. I was like, wow, that's crazy. It's crazy.
They completely changed the industry.
They did.
And
they did.
And in the beginning, I think their whole thing was, hey, we're a tech company. We're not a traditional studio. So their whole attitude creatively was come on over and do what you do.
Yeah. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And we'll back you up on projects no one else will support. And I think for a long time that was their thing, and it worked, I thought, beautifully.
Yeah.
But of course, as they grow, they became more and more like a traditional studio.
Yeah.
But their model was so, like you said, algorithmically informed that I was also very like, what are we making? And for who? And when you have multiple answers to that and are expected to kind of react creatively to this algorithmic data that comes in.
Yes.
And people would say like, oh, well, we happen to know that this particular demographic disengages at this time. Can you move a scene into this exact time window? Yeah. And it's like, what are we doing?
That was the thing that I found, because when I was there for Longmire, very different experience.
Sure.
We were canceled by A&E. Netflix picked up Longmire, gave us a second life, and we created 3 of the most beautiful seasons of that show.
Yes.
And then to go back for another life and feel, for better or for worse, that we were making a show for an algorithm felt very unsatisfying for me. I was trying so hard to be in the moment with the character that I played and questioning why we were doing so much.
Yeah.
It was really difficult for that show. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm
Sure.
so grateful that it existed, and like bless them for doing that and then, keeping it going. But it just, as a creative person, I struggled within that model.
It's a difficult model to operate in, and it flies against a lot of, especially if you have a specific creative vision that you're trying to kind of get out.
Yeah.
I think if you come into a project knowing that it's like, yeah, we're the mission here is to respond in real time to this algorithmic, mandate and try to create content.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. I've never liked that word. And content.
Either have I, because what is it?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's what is
content.
It? It's content. It's a thing that goes in a container.
Yeah.
I think that works against, really intentional storytelling. And what I loved about the early days of Netflix was they said, we have such a huge audience. If you make this thing intentionally, the right audience will find it.
The audience will find it.
Yeah.
That went away.
And it was, how do we make this as appealing as possible immediately to as many people as possible? And that's a whole different, that's a radically different strategy. And I think not necessarily conducive to the kind of specific storytelling that is the most satisfying to work on.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, I think the most satisfying to watch.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
But, as they continue to kind of try to figure out this new way that people are being entertained, and the industry tries to react to those changes, it'll change again.
Of course it will.
But yeah, it's been such even since we made Oculus, I don't recognize the industry at all. No. And the mission that we were under, what we thought we had to accomplish to sell the film, to market the film, to release that movie as a wide theatrical release.
Yeah.
With a studio that's gone. That's just completely gone. Absent now.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me, that we made the film, we took it to Toronto, we sold the movie, and then kept making the movie.
Yeah.
Because we had to go shoot new stuff.
Yeah.
To get it out there, so that they could do. And I think back, and I remember when the logos came up, and I was like, right, WWE.
Yeah.
What an interesting patchwork that we put together to get that movie out there. Today, that would have gone right to a streamer.
It would have gone right to a streamer.
Yeah.
There is something about the industry now that for someone, I've been in the industry since 1994. I am trying to find my place now in it because it's so different.
Yeah.
Because it's unrecognizable. It feels very strange to me. Very strange.
Yeah. And even if you find your place in it, the place is so temporary, you know, that changes.
Yeah.
And I think that drives a lot of, you know, that sense of needing to reinforce, you know, the place that you make for yourself and to say, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And this is why, if you want Katee Sackhoff to be on set, this is why, this is what you get, you know?
Right.
Which I think you're wonderful at cultivating. And yeah, I guess it makes it so that we're never going to live in this business without that anxiety, that's fun.
That's sort of where we started.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about making a witch movie?
I would love to make a witch movie. Yeah.
Because I wonder, because like you're so, like, it just always, Salem horror, being like, you know, inspired by that in your career. It seems like the most obvious. Like, I would have thought you'd made 5 of them already.
I've had treatments over the years that I've scribbled down. And the thing about, you know, the approach for a really good witch story, because it is so tangled in the real horrors that we've inflicted on women and girls, you know, in ways that it's like you have to kind of step back and look at it and be like, human beings were doing this to each other in Massachusetts, in all over the country. You know, it's such a fascinating and horrible expression of this horrible misogyny that's weaponized in such a grotesque way that simultaneously doesn't understand and fears femaleness. And then you counterbalance that with the fictional supernatural side of it, which becomes about power, you know, and powers. And it's an irresistible kind of canvas to play with. I would love to do it. Or to do something close to it. There's some TV projects I think coming up that'll have elements of that.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I would love to. I think it would be wonderful. And I've over the years been like, do I do a historical drama just about what actually happened in Salem?
Because just as horrifying. That's probably the most horrifying.
Yeah, and that
you know,
or
what I mean?
Is it? Can we do something that's you know, more supernatural and more metaphorical, and both are incredibly compelling.
Have you ever wanted to make a horror film for kids, like a Hocus Pocus? Because now you have children.
Yes, and like, what's a good gateway horror, and what's a thing that makes kids less scared of the things that scare kids? Because that's the awesome thing about young horror, which when I was a kid was normal. Disney made horror movies.
Disney made horror all the time.
They were great.
Yeah,
and they gently introduced kids into an environment where they cathartically confronted anxiety and fear, but came out braver, more confident, and with a sense that, like, yes, these things are overcomeable. It's not just a great gateway into the genre. It's terrific kind of character building.
Yeah,
and it's like going to the gym for courage. We don't do that anymore. It's like we've isolated kids away from horror.
Yeah,
it's for adults. It's too dark for the kids. But I think about, like, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And these shows that completely formed me and made it okay that I was a kid who was scared.
Yeah. Well, and Goosebumps.
Goosebumps was wonderful for this.
Yeah.
Like, kids are so afraid, at least I was, afraid of my peers and my teachers and adults and the world and bullies and or just having to talk in public or go on the playground.
Even like Drop Dead Fred.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it takes something that kids are so scared of. Little kids are so scared of what goes bump in the night, what's hiding in the closet, what's under the bed, and making it fun.
Yeah.
And funny and imaginative and creative.
That's important to do. And, but I would love to do that. We tried on one of our Netflix shows to do a YA show, and it didn't entirely work, but I loved the mission of it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, making a movie that my kids can watch now. Mm-hmm. And that where I'm not like...
that you don't have to wait and hold it for them.
Yeah, where I'm not like, as soon as you guys are 17, you'll really get to enjoy some of the work that I've done.
I know.
You know, that's I think it would be great. And the challenge is convincing studios, that there's a huge market.
It's a huge market.
It's just, at the moment anyway, the season in the industry says like, no, we keep kids away from that.
Yeah.
Although you see Goosebumps pop up, and
it has popped up, but for an older audience.
Yeah.
It
becomes nostalgic for the adults.
Yeah.
Less than it's accessible for the kids.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
We, my husband and I wanted to remake Halloween Town for Disney, but like ground it.
Yeah.
But keep it for a while, but ground it. And they were like, yeah, you can't mess with that model. It worked. So I was like, all right, dang it. We'll find one. Do you feel fulfilled in what you're working on now?
I do. It's interesting because when I finished Midnight Mass, I had this sense that if I never made another TV show, I was okay with that. And that was, I did everything I wanted to do in TV. And then I just had that with a movie, which is unfair to talk about because nobody's seen it. But, but I did this movie called The Life of Chuck. It doesn't have a distributor. It's almost like all the way back to Oculus. We're going to go try to sell it at a festival.
Oh, that's so cool.
No idea how it's going to go. It's not a horror movie. It's my first not horror movie. It's a movie my kids could watch today.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a movie that just is so life-affirming. And like when I watch it, I smile until my face hurts.
Is that the Stephen King? That's his short story.
It's a Stephen King short story that's just beautiful. And I have no idea what will happen with The Thing because they've got Stephen King and they've got me. So everyone's going to think horror.
Yeah. And
it just isn't. But that one, when I finished that, I was like, yeah, if that's the last movie I make, I'm okay. And between the two of them, it's been very freeing to kind of feel like, yeah, I'm very satisfied with what I do and have done. And everything ahead of me, there are projects I'm incredibly excited about. But I'm also like, the pressure's off. And I feel like I've said what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And if it all went away tomorrow, I'd be okay. It's like that I did it. And so, yeah, I feel very relaxed professionally for the first time ever.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Hungry to work as ever, but at peace with it.
I think that's like to go back where we started when talking about Mandalorian and how I felt, you like perfectly, of course, because you're a writer, like perfectly explained how I feel. I still have a drive to keep working, but I feel like, oh, okay, I did it. Like, that was cool. But I still want to keep working, of course.
Of course. And hopefully there's something that comes along.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, this is a height I hadn't imagined.
Yeah.
Hopefully that happens. But
I'm looking for something that requires every facet of me.
Sure. Yeah. That's the other thing. How can you challenge yourself? How can you really just dissect yourself? If you've gotten to do the thing, you did it. Now, how do you rip yourself to pieces?
And just shred me up and be, out there.
Sure.
2 more questions and then we'll be done.
I'm enjoying this so much.
I know, me too. I could talk to you forever. But quintessential film, because I know you're such a film buff. If there were like a handful of films or 3 films that you think people should watch, like that if someone wants to follow in your footsteps or do what you do, either your projects or someone else's projects, what are the 3 projects that you think are the best examples of what inspired you?
Wow, that's a great question. The movies that I feel like I want my kids to see, and I'll leave mine out of it. But just in general, where I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to sit with my kids and watch this to say like, this is what's possible.
Yeah.
Bob Fosse's All That Jazz.
Oh my God.
Perfect film and a movie to me that really shows what personal storytelling can be and how it can be transcendent for the storyteller and for the audience at the same time.
Yeah.
In a movie that is so specific to one human being's experience in life, but feels universal. That movie, every time I see it, I'm just like, God, what a gift that film is. So that would be on there. Probably The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, God.
As far as just being so lost in a story and a story of hope and resilience. That's when I and the filmmaking's just impeccable.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What a beautiful film from first frame to last.
Yeah. It's like, this is magnificent, uplifting, elevating cinema. And then on the other side of it, because I think about like, okay, horror.
Yeah.
And there's so many wonderful horror movies that I'm like, oh, well, you have to see.
Mm-hmm.
The Shining, The Thing, The Exorcist. You have to do all these. But the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life is not a horror movie. It's a Russian movie called Come and See. Okay. It's a war movie. And that to me shows the potential of horror, even though it isn't technically a horror movie. It's the kind of thing I'd sit my kids down and it's like if you make them watch Schindler's List. It's like, this is important that you experience this, but I'd also be like, you're going to be a little different on the other side of it, But yeah, I think those would be kind of essential viewing for very different reasons. Yeah.
What's the best movie you've seen lately?
I really liked Civil War. I just saw that last week. I really enjoyed that. But best movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once made me cry for reasons I didn't understand for like 45 minutes during the movie. I just started crying. It was during the scene with the rocks chatting. And the tears started coming down my face and I was smiling and crying. And I kind of lost control. And Kate leaned over about 20 minutes into this thing and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, I haven't been affected by a movie this way in a really long time. And I couldn't put my finger on it on the first viewing. But that movie, I think, is going to inspire a generation of filmmakers. There was something so honestly, emotionally gorgeous and devastating about that movie. That's one of the best movies I've seen in many years.
I finished that film and sat in silence.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? Literally.
Yeah. There's nothing like it. It's its own singular thing.
Nothing like it. And you get to the end of it, and I felt like I wanted to start at the very beginning and watch it again in that moment.
Yeah. I saw it. I knew nothing about the movie. We had just shut down production on House of Usher unexpectedly.
Yes.
And we were supposed to be on set that day. And we were like, well, we're not going to set today.
Yeah.
Shows shut down briefly. And so Kate and Mike Fimignari, who's the DP for
you've
Oculus,
worked with for do you work with him on everything?
Just about. The times when we don't work together, which has only been twice in features, has been because he's directing his own movie.
Yeah.
Which is a great reason.
Yeah, of course. Damn you.
I know. But Fimi is family, and we were in Vancouver. We didn't know what to do with the rest of our day, so we went to the theater and saw the poster. It was opening weekend of Everything Everywhere, and we saw the poster, and we're like, oh, okay. No context as to what it was. And we went in with no expectations, no idea what we were watching. I had my insane crying fit.
Yeah.
And we all sat there like you. We sat there just stunned at the end of it. And I was like, this movie's gonna be, this is gonna just blow the world wide open. And it was before all the award talk and before all that. And I was like, I just hope people see this movie.
That's how I felt.
Yeah, like I just hope it finds that the audience was huge, of course, for it. But,
the movie felt so brave.
Yeah.
And I know that I say that to people that didn't get it. And
Yeah.
they're like, please stop it. You're such an actor. Like, and no, like I look at the performances in that movie and they're so brave
and honest. And I was shocked because I thought I was like, everyone's going to love this movie.
Yeah, me too.
And when there were the detractors who came out, and I feel like that's a natural kind of reaction sometimes to a movie that's that
to success. Yeah.
Yeah. But people were like, well, there's just not much substance there. And I was like, I completely disagree. And they're like, well, it's not about anything. And I was like, it's about everything.
Everything.
And it's about kindness and acceptance and family. And you know, and it just hit a nerve for me that felt every now and then a movie or a TV show or a book, more frequently with books, brushes against something that's true. And something that has nothing to do with the marketing, the algorithms, the content, the entertainment, and it just touches a thing that is true and a thing that can't be articulated easily with words. And when a story does that and you touch that thing, it's such a profound explosion, and it's such a rare magic trick. Those things are so precious to me, and so infrequent because there's so much noise that when you hit that moment, you're like that has this kernel in it of just total truth, and truth is beauty, right? And that's, I think, why we cry. It's like that's what hits. It's so rare for that to happen in a product, you know, that when it does, I cling to these things and I want to share them and I want other people to see it. So I can be like, look, it's true. It's true. You know, I felt that way over the years reading Stephen King, that there would be, for all the thousands of pages that he generates and the horrific imagery and the killer clowns and the, you know, the haunted hotels and all of that you go through a couple thousand pages and then all of a sudden you turn one and there's this kernel of total human truth that's just there. And it's utterly unassuming. And like, that's the stuff that makes the Shawshank Redemption what it is. And it's like, that's the stuff you touch it and, you know, Stand By Me. And you just brush against it. And I keep wanting to be like, how do we make something that just touches that thing, like that touches something true? And it's almost impossible to do on purpose. You know,
it is impossible to do on purpose.
Yeah,
I'm literally over here crying because it's like, that is why I'm number one. I'm longing for it.
Yeah,
I long for that creativeness, that truthfulness on a daily basis, because our industry has gotten away from it in so many forms. So when you do see a movie like that, it's there. You hold on to it. It inspires it. For me, it's why I became an actor. I didn't become an actor to be famous. I didn't become an actor to make money. I became an actor because I got goosebumps when I was on the ET ride. And I said to my mom, I want to give people goosebumps. It's the whole reason I became an actor. It inspired me to make people feel. And I feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm wasting my time and theirs. You know?
absolutely. And you're having to try to find that in an environment that is entirely artificial.
Content.
Yeah. But and even in our best stories,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
it's sets and actors.
You're right.
And these little moments where the camera's rolling, but it's surrounded by the mundane reality of production. And it's the most artificial thing, you know, it's the furthest away from truth. So if you can find that goosebump moment in that environment where you're looking at an actor and just to your left is a bored, you know, sound operator holding a pole over your face.
Yeah.
And over here's, producers on their phones at the monitor in a 3-wall set, and you're in makeup and hair and none of it's real.
Yeah.
And then there's something real there that you all collectively make.
Yeah.
That's, it's magic. And it's why I love movies and cinema and theater. Because you can create it on a stage together, and sometimes it radiates enough for an audience.
It requires the audience to be there, though, right?
Of course.
The audience, and you hear this from people that have been on stage, and I've only toyed with it. But when the audience is there, and it can be different from the matinee to the night, or the Saturday to the Sunday night, when they're there with you, and sometimes it only takes one person who's there with you and it pulls the whole audience in. When they're there with you as a collective, it's an experience that is unlike anything else.
Yeah.
And people will remember it their entire lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's transformative. And it sucks that it's so rare, because it doesn't have to be.
No.
It really doesn't have to be, but it is.
I feel like the sets that you create, and I said this to you when we were texting about Oculus, the trust that you give your actors is such a beautiful thing. And it is really wonderful. Truco has talked about it with me, and Mary's talked about it with me. That is part of creating magic. One person can't do it by themselves.
Oh, hell no.
It is literally a collective, just like it is on stage with the audience. It's the same thing with a crew, with a cast, with a moment, because as an actor, you have to feel so supported and so brave around people you don't know to be able to tap into something that is magic. And it's not every day. It doesn't have to be every day,
Yeah.
But you create those sets, and that's why people want to work with you over and over and over again.
Thank you. It's really important to us that the set be as positive and collaborative as possible. And I learned, I had really great teachers, Katee Sackhoff, on my first real movie, because I had a terrific cast. I was working with Katee Sackhoff. I was working with Karen Gillan. I had a wonderful education on that movie when I was as scared as I've ever been and as insecure as I've ever been. That trusting an actor to do what they do with a character and building something together would always yield way better results than trying to achieve a stranglehold on the thing and say, mine. And I learned so much from you and from that experience and from your castmates on that about what was possible if you collaborate. And it's really, thankfully, been something that just keeps proving itself out, even when, and I've had rough cast experiences in my life since then, and I've had rough crew experiences since then. It's people. It's a lot of people.
Of course.
The chemistry.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean they're bad people.
No.
It's that intangible, weird chemistry and energy when you get that many people together, building something together.
Yeah.
But I've never regretted trusting artists.
Yeah.
And my God, they've made me look really good over the years. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, I'm excited to see what's next, because I say this, Truco. It's like, you'd think Truco and I were married. At one time we were on camera. But we were just talking about this. He just had a phenomenal experience on a film that he worked on. And I don't even know if I can talk about it, so I won't. But the reaction was by these filmmakers and why he was hired. We watch everything that Mike Flanagan does the second it comes out, and we take notes.
Wow.
That is cool. That's
cool.
super, super cool. And so there's a world of people that are waiting to see what you do next and, holding their breath.
Oh, man.
So I am one of those people. So I'm very excited to see what comes next.
And likewise with your work. And I hope one of the things that comes next is that we're working together again, because it's been way too long.
Only if we can create magic, Mike.
Exactly. Let's make some magic.
All right. On that note, this has been Mike Flanagan. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for hanging out for the Hindsight of Mike Flanagan. I'm still Katee Sackhoff, but I am joined with the my co-hosts that never wanted to be co-hosts, Jeff and Casper.
and the one that wants to be a co-host.
And
I don't think that any of us is actually
my husband,
eager.
Robin. Gatsby, you guys, none of them are co-hosts. They're not. I just keep calling them all that because if I sat here and just talked into a void, it would not be as fun. So now I talk into the void that is these three men, and I'm their baby.
You just kept talking to us until we started responding.
I did. For the first couple episodes, I kept talking to you and you wouldn't respond. And I was like, answer the fucking question, Jeff.
All right. Well, we're responding now.
You are.
Dear.
You are. I'm going to have to pay you guys in like alcohol and weed or something.
Deal.
No. It's going to cost you way more than that. You want to talk about Mike a little bit?
I was going to say I can only provide the sexual payments to my husband.
God.
That's not for sale, guys.
It's amazing to me that you have worked as long as you have and not gotten sued for something you've said to somebody on set.
It's true. It's true. I feel like I'm a shuffle ball change away from cancellation at all times. But here's the thing. The shit that comes out of my mouth is not offensive, really. I don't think. I'm not like I'm not hurting people's feelings. I'm not like I'm a bad person. I just say inappropriate shit sometimes. But I never cross the line.
You're not using it to have power over people either.
No, I would never do that. And there's a time and a place. There is a time and a place to whip out what I got in my mouth.
Oh, God.
Sorry, that wasn't.
Jesus.
All right. Now you crossed the line. There it was. We found it.
That was not what.
That was awful.
Oh, my God.
All right. So Mike Flanagan.
Yeah. Mike Flanagan. You guys, working with Mike was one of the most wonderful experiences I had. I've never done a ton of feature films. I'm primarily, we've talked about how I've done a lot of acting or just a lot of TV. Mm-hmm. I got Oculus because Mike was a fan of Battlestar Galactica, and it was a straight offer for Oculus. And we talk about it, how, the one thing I was terrified of was that I couldn't strangle a 6-year-old. I was really scared to run around a house for half of a movie trying to kill 2 children that were under the age of 8. And so when I got on the FaceTime with him back in the day, and he was like, no, we're going to change it. We're going to make him 12. And I was like, then I'm fucking in.
What was it that bothered you about that with the 6-year-old? Because presumably you knew you were acting and weren't actually going to have to kill a child, right?
I think what it was, accidents happen. No, I think what it was that I think in my mind, I could have a conversation with a 12-year-old, like an older child, and be like, this is our safe word. You know what it feels like to be scared for real. You know what it feels like to know that this is hurting you. You know those things. I was a little concerned with the idea of talking to a child so young and their ability to actually grasp what was really happening. Right. And I didn't want to be responsible for not only potentially hurting a child that young, but also completely fucking them up for their life. Could you imagine at 6 years old, you're getting strangled by a person covered in prosthetic makeup? Like, I don't remember certain things from when I'm 6. That could be like the shit nightmares is made out of. That person could be a serial killer, and I did it.
It makes me think of when we're playing with Ginny, like we're playing pretend with Ginny, and it gets too real because we're getting into character and we start to actually get into it. And then all of a sudden she goes from playing to being terrified. And you're like, oh shit, I got too into the character.
Yeah, you make it too real. And she goes, no, daddy, too real, too real.
Yeah.
So that was my fear.
Right.
My fear was, like scarring a child for years to come.
But it was easier to do to a 12-year-old.
Super easy. It's super easy.
Basically a teenager. No one likes teenagers.
No one likes teenagers.
Yeah, they need to be scared a little bit, actually.
And we, the little girl from that, Annalise Basso, who's fantastic actress. She's in oh my gosh, what's that show that shot in with Jennifer? Oh my gosh, she's married to Paul Bettany. You guys, my brain is fried. It was the one that Alex Podnovic is in that was shooting about a train in Canada. Night Walker Snowpiercer. Thank you. Night Walker Snowpiercer. Night Walker is Jon Snow Snowpiercer. That's how I got there in my head.
Yeah, with Chris Evans. Isn't he in that movie?
He was in the movie. The TV show Annalise Basso is in. She's a fantastic actress, but we had safe words. And at one point, I thought I was strangling her too much because she was able to turn her face into a tomato. And she was legitimately just doing it. And I wanted, as soon as it cut, I said to everyone, I said, you guys know that wasn't me. That wasn't me. I didn't do it. And she's like, it was me. I was holding my breath and breathing out really hard, but not like letting the air out. And I was like, oh my God.
That is such a thing a little kid would be proud of too.
Right? Like, make it look like
how much it looks
dying.
Like I'm dying. Yeah.
It's like me with waterboarding. How cool did that look? I got waterboarded.
She's got her career in that world though. She's been in Slender Man, Ouija, Origin of Evil. She's done, and before that, Lady World looks like a horror, and Snowpiercer is dark as hell too. So she's made her little career. I feel like if you are a little child that can be creepy or something in a horror movie, they just cycle you through as many as they can. Yeah. Until you age out of it.
Yeah, I think the little boy from that movie though doesn't work anymore by a choice. Like I think he was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
You did mess him up then.
Yeah. Fully messed up.
Strangled too hard.
Yeah, totally. We talk about in the film, have you guys known anyone that drank way too much and was really good at it and then got sober?
What do you mean good at drinking too much?
Like you never thought they were going to quit drinking. Like that was like that's who
they were
were.
Also functional as an alcoholic too?
Yeah, like they went to work. They weren't losing their jobs. They weren't like losing their relationships. They were like a functioning person that just drank way too much.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So Mike getting sober was something I never expected. I was like, he did what? But I see in hindsight that he really did have a problem. And because he was so high functioning and because he would come to work the next day and be amazing and brilliant, I think he was allowed or in his mind, it wasn't a problem, but it clearly was. And he's like excelled in his sobriety.
Yeah. He seems like he's really been doing a lot. I mean, one thing that he's working on, you guys probably didn't talk about it at all, but I'm excited for it, is he's doing, are you familiar with the Dark Tower? Did you guys talk about the Dark Tower at all?
So we talked about it a little bit, but not in the, it's one of those things where you don't know quite what can come out, what you're supposed to talk about, what you're not supposed to talk about. There's a couple things that he's teased on his social media as well that I was like, reticent to bring up because it didn't feel like they were ready to be talked about yet. And that was one of them. The Dark Tower was one of them. Yeah.
Are you a Dark Tower fan?
No. Robin?
I'm a huge Dark Tower fan. Stephen King's McCam. Yeah.
Me too.
I'm excited and apprehensive because they did attempt it with Idris Elba. Yeah. And it was not ideal. I didn't think he was poorly cast or anything. I just think they didn't plan it through properly and execute it very well.
What is it about? Were you guys Stephen King fans growing up?
Not growing up. I'm a later in life Stephen King fan.
Are you?
But,
likewise.
But big fan.
What is it about Stephen King that resonates so strongly with adolescent boys?
Jeff, you want to go first?
Well, I didn't start reading until I was in my 30s, so...
So the question remains, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Robin, I don't know. I mean, I think the supernatural and the horror element is just generally something that's interesting about it. But the writing style to me is what has really been what's been drawn me to it.
I don't know if I would have wanted to read it as a kid because I would have been terrified of it. The original It movie was one of the first horror movies I ever saw. And I think I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and it scared the shit out of me for a very long time.
Yeah.
And if you rewatch it, it's not scary at all. It's very campy, and it's, it's just bad effects and all that stuff. But it scared me about clowns for a long time. So I never read Stephen King till I was in my 20s. And then the first book I read was It, the book. And I think what draws not adolescent boys maybe to Stephen King, but boys like Jeff and I, is the way that he captures childhood imagination in the books. Like, it is very much a story about children's imaginations having a certain amount of power or something different than what adults can do.
Yeah.
Like, the whole idea is that adults can't really see the it, and they're not able to face it because they're not even aware of its existence. And adults are kind of evil in a sense, or negligent towards it. So I think that for me was like the way he writes about kids and their imaginations and their dreams and captures the childhood experience in that book was the first thing that got me hooked. And almost every book he has, there's a certain element of that involved in it.
My brother read a lot of Stephen King growing up. I mean, that was, my brother was, Robin knows him. My brother is very smart kid. School was not something that he enjoyed at all. He rebelled against school, actually. But you couldn't get this kid to read a summer book to save his life. But when he found Stephen King, he wouldn't put the books down. He read them all the time and over again. I don't know what it was about them. I should ask my brother as well.
I know, you should ask him. But there is something about the sort of, maybe you see the darkness of what a childhood can be a little bit in it. Like, it doesn't paint childhood as this perfect idealistic thing. It paints it. There's lots of like things that come up with parenthood and people who are supposed to take care of you who don't, and fears and puberty and sex and thoughts that you shouldn't have, but they do. Like, Stephen King explores those thoughts. The Dark Tower, though, is a different sort of beast entirely. Like, it almost doesn't feel like Stephen King when you read his normal horror books, and then Dark Tower is just a sort of an odd, different thing, but also amazing. I don't know, Jeff, how did you feel about The Dark Tower compared to his other stuff?
Well, when I say like, what is my favorite Stephen King book, I always kind of put The Dark Tower as a separate thing, because it's like too. The Dark Tower is its own separate thing, and it's amazing, and it's one of my favorite pieces of literature, all of them together. Yeah. But outside of that is all the other Stephen King books that, we could pick up and do whatever. But The Dark Tower was very like, I was reading it for the first time during the pandemic, and it like, there was a moment where I was like walking around. It was like early in the pandemic, and I was just out walking in the neighborhood, and there's a major character death that happens later in the books. And like, I think all the pandemic just fear and anxiety like hit through me at this character dying. And I cried harder at that than I've cried at like some family members' funerals, because it was just like, boom, hit me.
Yeah, it's an emotional, Dark Tower is a really emotional ride, actually.
I don't know anything about it. I'm excited to go into it with Mike. Mike's style of directing is so, for the limited amount of Stephen King books that I've read, and my favorite Stephen King book is, and I don't even know if I'm going to get the title right, but it's like The Long Walk. Is that what it's called?
I don't know that.
It's about the boys that walk, and that's the thing in the town, and they get like, I don't want to spoil it for people, but they like die and shit.
Are you talking about The Body, which what Stand By Me was based off of?
No, it's called like, we should look it up because it's a phenomenal book. Anyway, so my point is that like the books that I have read of Stephen King and Mike's style of directing, they feel so similar. It's very clear to me that his horror sensibilities and the kind of horror that he likes to write is influenced heavily by Stephen King.
Mm-hmm. Did you see Dr. Sleep?
I did.
Yeah. Did you ever read The Shining or Dr. Sleep, the books?
No, I did not.
But you've watched The Shining the movie.
I have watched The Shining. It was terrifying. But also, like, horror movies, the psychological horror of Stephen King is something that I find really interesting because I'm not a big fan of, like, grotesque horror.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that type of, like, that psychological, like, fuck with your head type stuff is really interesting to me. And I love that the way Mike does the same thing.
Yeah. Doing Dr. Sleep is a bold undertaking when you're taking someone who's as famous as Stephen King to do one of his books, plus you're also following up Stanley Kubrick on one of the best horror movies of all time. Like, that must have been a weighty pursuit.
I think he did a good job of blending the two, which was the challenge he had. It was really good. I'm a big fan of Mike Flanagan. And did you see Midnight Mass?
I did. So
our good friend Michael Trucco. Sexy
Trucco.
Ned Flanders himself.
Yeah. So Michael Trucco, who is a guest on the podcast at some point coming up, was also because of Battlestar Galactica, and Mike being a fan of Battlestar, there's a lot of Battlestar Galactica people in his projects. Mary McDonnell was just in The Fall at the House of Usher, and then you got Michael Trucco, and there's got to be a few more. But, like, Michael has gotten into that family. He did a movie that Mike and his wife Kate wrote called Hush. That was really cool. Michael was in that. And then he was in, the first one was Midnight Mass, the first one he did.
That was like where he had, I don't know if he maybe had showed up in anything else, but that was where he had like a distinct character role and was part of the ensemble cast.
And then he did Fall of the House of Usher. And one of the cool things that Michael Trucco talks about in his episode that Flanagan and I didn't talk about was, and this is what I loved about Mike Flanagan, the collaborative feeling of his projects. The fact that you've got a man who creates something from the word go and is able to release it to the talent that he brings on and let them take ownership over their characters is not normal. He's got such a confidence in not only what he's created, his vision as a director, but in who he's cast, that he lets you ad-lib. He lets you create the character you want to create. The character of Marie in Oculus was a collaboration between the two of us. The animalistic way that she carries herself and she crawls through the house and she's sort of like this like demon type thing movement. That was all him just saying, what do you want to do? Like, you do whatever you want to do. And like, it was so cool. Michael Trucco in Fall of the House of Usher has a monologue where he had written it down purely as backstory. One of his things as an actor was, because the scene just seemed to end to him. So he was like, if my character kept talking, what would he say? And he wrote it down and he fucking memorized it. And Flanagan let him do it, and they kept it in the movie. And it is such a huge monologue, and it's wonderful. And I think that Flanagan actually had it printed on a mug for him because it perfectly embodied the character. But as the writer and the director and the creator of this character who allowed someone else to come in and add his own words and form who that character was, that is confidence, and that is why so many actors want to work with him repeatedly, because he lets everyone do it, you know?
It's amazing.
He also, Michael Trucco, what a stellar role for him, because he did a great job in Midnight Mass. I thought he was fantastic in that, but I know Michael Trucco as an actor from playing Mr. Handsome in How I Met Your Mother. I didn't know he had that kind of monologue acting ability. And watching him do that performance, he nailed it so thoroughly that he was my favorite character to see pop up on the screen every time when we were watching that show.
I agree, because you hated him, and
but he was also very, at the same time, quite charming, and maybe it's because it's Michael and I love the guy. Yeah. But yeah, really.
And we didn't touch on it, but it was brought up in the press, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because I don't know, how much was public knowledge. But halfway through filming The Fall of the House of Usher, they replaced Frank Mangella.
It was in the press. You can talk about it.
Was it why he was fired? It was, basically, like, he was really hard to work with. He was not treating people very well. And Mike and Trevor, who director and producer, wanted to create such a positive environment and wanted to get the bad apple out that they literally fired him. Everything was shot. They had to go back,
a lot of it,
and reshoot everything with Bruce Greenwood. And that guy stepped in and took over this role when they were more than halfway done shooting with another character. And they got rid of him because he wasn't conducive to a safe environment for people to be in. And that's fucking cool. That's cool because most of the time that behavior would just be tolerated. And you put people in unsafe work environments, like we were talking about the other day, whether it's sexual harassment or not, or sex scene you're not comfortable with. People were not comfortable with him around, and the producers got together and said, then we need to get rid of him. And that's crazy.
Well, according to his memoir, it was cancel culture. So,
oh yeah.
Well, according to Google AI overview, it was inappropriate comments and engaging in sexual harassment towards a female co-star. So, two different stories.
Well, there you go. Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
Yeah. You never know.
It's the woke mob.
Yeah, but anyway, so he was let go, and Bruce stepped in and did a wonderful job. So anyway, I love Mike Flanagan.
The thing that I found sort of funny and just me skimming through the episode was that Mike's favorite film is All That Jazz.
Yeah, he. Oh my God, my dog just farted. Oh my God, you guys!
Again.
Oh my God! My eyes. I feel like a skunk just crawled into my eyeballs.
Made a great return.
Happy. Oh my God! Oh my God! I think a lot of people's favorite movie is All That Jazz.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen All That Jazz? Do it.
Yeah, I'll add it to my letterbox.
Directed by Bob Fosse. Is he the creator of the Fosse?
Fosse.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, he is a fan of cinema. And, one of the coolest things is that walking around his house, he collects things like movie props and things like that. So not only does he have things from his movies everywhere, but other movies. And it's fucking cool. Like the little car from The Shining?
Mm-hmm.
Or like the tricycle?
It's in his house.
Is it the actual one?
I don't know. But a lot of the actual stuff, like he spent a lot of money on a lot of this stuff. So
I really hope so. I hope it's the real one, because having just a fake tricycle, kid's tricycle that sort of looks like the one from The Shining is just kind of weird. It's a very weird thing to have.
Yeah.
I mean, people would do it.
I don't know. I don't know. It's you guys, if you are not a fan of Mike and if you haven't seen his stuff, I highly suggest it. I think that he's very, very interesting writer and director, and he'll be around for a long time. So I'm excited to see what's next, especially if I'm in it. So let's look at some comments.
Let's do it.
Robert Pace 4913 said, never, ever take a phone into a hyperbaric chamber. If anything, however remote, causes a spark in that chamber, you're now in a giant firebomb. No electronics and nothing that causes any static electricity. I did all the branding design for an HBOT center. I learned a ton, super fascinating stuff. The horror stories that they showed me, you do not want anyone to die like that. I will let my father know, Robert, and see what he has to say. Because for a man who's doing everything to hold on to his youth, I'm sure he doesn't want to go up in a ball of flames in a hyperbaric chamber. Probably not.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just looking at it briefly, and it sounds. You can definitely explode in a hyperbaric chamber.
Oh my God, I need to tell my dad. He's like, I take my phone and I read books and stuff.
I mean, yeah, definitely tell him.
You should just get a book.
Yeah, well, I don't even. He answers emails and shit. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'll talk to my dad about it. I'll let you know.
Thank you, Robert Pace. May have saved a life right there.
May have. Terenzo50 said TBIs are nothing to mess with. It was a TBI that killed actor Jeffrey Hunter some 6 months after the original onset injury. The correlation of name and career is called nominative determinism, but it isn't just considered a done deal. Just please don't ever play with the naming of your kids. Oh, I understand what they're saying. This is two separate things. Okay.
Right.
So he's talking about the TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury that we talked about with Tate Fletcher in his episode. Tate goes into detail, if you haven't listened to that episode, about his onset injury that accumulative with the other head injuries that he's gotten in his life led to traumatic brain injury. And it's his road to recovery, which is quite inspiring. But then the second thing that this person says is the correlation of name and career, which is what we were talking about, wanting to name our child Gamble, and we were scared we were going to raise a child with a gambling addiction. So that's what he's talking about. He said, it isn't considered a done deal. Just please don't ever play with naming of your kids like Bill Lear or Learjet fame, who named his daughter Crystal Shanda, or the Chianti family, who named their little girl Nancy Ann. What is Nancy Ann?
Yeah, what's the reference?
Why is the reference Nancy Ann?
Nancy Ann does not seem like the thing that we're talking about.
Nancy Ann
Nancy
Nancy.
No,
Nancy Nancy. Maybe that's it.
Nancy.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But Crystal Chandelier.
Crystal Chandelier. So my parents, I think it was my mom, grew up with a girl named Candy Cane. Literally, her fucking name was Candy Cane.
How did she turn out?
Sweet.
Super sweet.
No.
Quick, Jeff, quick. I like it. Yeah. I mean...
So are you saying she turned out to be a stripper? What do you mean?
How do you not? I don't know. I don't know what she turned out, but that was her name. So, yeah, I think we made the right decision.
But I think this is a little bit different. Like naming your kid Crystal Chandelier is silly and goofy, but it doesn't mean your kid's going to end up being a chandelier salesman for a living or whatever.
They might.
We're talking about like...
They might, Robin.
They might.
Well, maybe. We were talking about like a weather...
She might shine like a diamond.
Yeah. Like a guy growing up to be a weatherman because his name is... John Winters or something.
Right. But anyway.
Or weather man.
Yeah. But now we know what it's called. It's called nominative determinism. Super cool. Smarter already.
Is that the same thing as some names being more prone to being successful and other names being prone to quote unquote failure?
Probably.
In Norway, if your name is Ronnie, then apparently you're shit out of luck and you're going to do poorly.
Ronnie?
Ronnie.
That's what is it about in Ronnie?
Ronnie.
It's like Johnny except with an R.
Yeah, Johnnies are fucked.
Well, no, Ronnie.
Johnnies are fucked. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. At least in Norway.
Ronnie. What is it about Ronnie?
It's just, I don't know, considered trashy or something.
So it's like the Chet of Norway.
So are you saying if your name is Chet, you're more likely to fail?
You can't be named Chet in America and do anything successful.
Stop it. I may want to work with Tom Hanks someday.
Well, I have a question then. Yeah. Robin, did you ever feel a desire to be Batman's sidekick?
Oh, that's a good question. That's very pointed to the situation. Yeah, no, I did actually initially, but then I got made fun of a lot. And Robin, when I was a kid, Robin was the original Robin in the TV series, and he sure was not cool at all. The lamest superhero ever.
But you were super cool.
No, I was not.
Still, is he even a superhero? What does he have?
I don't think he has
no, there's no super. He's just a hero.
He's like a
I think he just holds
artist.
A cape, and then one day he was like, "Can I wear one too?"
I don't even know if in the original TV series if he had like a circus background or not, because I think that was added later in the.
Hey, you guys, do you remember Batman and Robin? Chris O'Donnell dressed up like fucking Robin.
Yeah, it was great.
That is literally when I started thinking Robin was a cool character. Yeah. Are you trying to say that you didn't think he was bad?
No, I'm thinking back now from where
how silly those movies were.
From where DC movies were and where they are. It's just a very...
I think they've gotten arguably worse.
Can you imagine if Henry Cavill had huge protruding nipples on his suit? People would be like, what is happening?
I would like that. That'd been fine.
It add some interest to the movies.
Oh my Lord. Let's get into the mail sack. Mailsack. We're going to the mailsack. Mailsack. Why are we calling it mailsack? I love the fact the dogs freaked out afterwards. You guys, I love it. I still love it. Let's get in the sack with me. Thank you all so you guys, I just want to remind you, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can send your emails to me at thesackoffshow@gmail.com. Thank you all for sending them. They provide hours of entertainment. And so I just want to say thank you. I also want to thank you all for anyone who has left a rating for me where you get your podcast. That's just super cool. So I really appreciate it. I read some of them and I really love it. And that helps the show a lot. And so if you haven't done that, go do that. If you don't like the show, fuck you, don't do it. Please. Please don't do it. And if you do like the show, maybe open some more accounts and write another one, that's okay. Vote 12 times. I don't care.
unless it's a legitimate election. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is from Heller. I was listening to the Katie O'Brien episode as I was walking out of an OBGYN appointment to see about doing hormone replacement therapy post-menopause. What about a podcast about women and aging in general, from dealing with all of those issues above to invisibility, to being an actor, to parenting, intimacy? There's so much to talk about. Who better to do it with two great friends who, aren't 20 anymore? Thanks for fucking bringing it up.
She's saying you shouldn't do a podcast with Jeff, Casper, and I about menopause and those issues.
I mean, how has menopause affected you guys?
That's rude.
I mean,
it's been hard.
There's women in my life.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with this. I think that it would be really wonderful. I also feel like I'm kind of doing it just without the sounding board of another woman.
It's what we're really missing in society today is the male perspective on the female body.
Exactly.
Especially in podcasting,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
In order to really make this podcast work, you just threw 3 white men at it.
I was going to say, you guys, I feel like you guys are super marginalized these days. And you really needed, some help. And so what better place, to do that than in here where we can talk about the female menopause.
Let's do it. I'm down. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
This is something you've talked about a lot. It just in general, not on podcasts, but something we've talked about a lot.
You mean doing a show or just in general?
These subject matters that she wants you to talk about. Menopause and the female stuff.
I'll continue.
I can't even think of the words to describe it. Just, the female, the bits, the things
female stuff.
Yeah, the stuff. Yeah.
I just went to the OBGYN today.
You did? How was that?
I did. It's a new one. We just moved here. And so I've been with...
The OBGYN is new or
the OBGYN is new, not the vagina. The OBGYN is new.
Lightly used.
Yeah. And I have been with the same OBGYN from the time I was 17 to 38. And then she retired, which broke my heart. And then started going to another doctor in her office. Probably only went to him for 3-4 years. And then we moved here. It's always weird to have a new person up your vagina. And I legitimately mean because they're up your vagina. Mm-hmm. It's a very strange thing for them to put this cold duckbill platypus thing in your vagina and screw it open like a vice to then scrape the inside of your vagina and get cells to make sure that you don't have an abnormal pap smear. And that could mean a myriad of different things. But this is what women are supposed to do. So this is your reminder, ladies. If you haven't gone and gotten your pap smear, go do it. It is so easy, but it also is really, really helps in discovering if there's anything wrong with your lady bits. So
ladies are really good about doing that stuff. It took Kate forever to convince me to go see a urologist for an issue I was having. And I do not ever want to find another one. It took forever for me to work up the nerve for this one guy to put a finger in my bum. I do not need to go searching for another one anytime soon. He and I are comfortable now. We've got a good thing going.
They've got apps for that.
People pay money for that. They do. Yeah. They really do. Have you guys had a finger in your butt by a doctor?
I had to do the same thing, and I accidentally, being new to the country, arranged an appointment at a women's only clinic. And
did they do it?
I felt like such a it was horrible.
That actually breaks my heart. But did they lead you in the right direction, or were you sitting in the waiting room,
through with it? It was just did they dozens of women there, and then me getting my rectum examined.
Did they? I feel like you didn't get the expert on the prostate you might have needed though, Casper. Did you get the?
What do you mean?
Well, because they're working on
because women don't have prostates
exclusively, and they don't have a prostate.
Oh no, this was a different thing.
You just had a butt problem.
Gotcha. I had a butt problem. Okay. A lump. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Don't be worried about that. I've had colonoscopies. I've had tons of them. It's the best sleep you're ever going to have.
Yep.
It's great. I highly recommend it. If you're over the age of 40, go get your butt looked at.
Anyway, so I told the women at that center I messed up and I'm not going to come back.
And that's how you met your wife. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Okay, Casey. I found myself resonating with being your own self-advocate. She's referencing the episode. Thank you. I just read the parentheses again. Sorry, guys. It was a great reminder that you are your own healthcare proxy. An advocate, no one else is going to speak up for you but you, and you need to be very proactive and very forward-thinking about yourself and your health. 100%, you guys. No one is going to take your health as seriously as you take your health. You only have to think about you, or if you're, you have children or family members, like you have a limited amount of people you have to think about. They have hundreds of patients. You have to take your health seriously. It is imperative to the success of a health journey if you get anything that is serious that you have to deal with. You have to.
100%.
You have to.
Yeah.
So
again, get a second, third, fourth opinion on it. We've learned that the hard way.
Yeah. Always, always, always get second and third
you
opinions.
Want to be able to trust that your doctor is the expert in everything. They are not. Most people are either a generalist and they're not a specialist in anything, or they're a specialist and they're only a specialist in that one thing. So look around.
We should do a whole episode about that.
Yeah, we should.
Michael, my vote is for the mailbag segment to be called the Mailsack. I think it is, Michael. It just makes the most sense. However, I think you should also have another segment where your guests ask you a question or two separate from your episode and incorporate that into the after show and call it the other side of the sack. P.S. As a fellow Spartan racer, you need to do more.
I would pitch it should be the underside of the sack, but that's just me.
I don't know what that would be called.
Well, eventually we could just call it the taint. That's what I'm hoping.
I just don't think you're going to convince a lot of the guests to be like, hey, do you want to do a thing for my taint section?
For people who don't know what the taint is,
please.
It is that fleshy, pushy part just under the balls before you hit the anus.
And ladies have a taint.
Ladies have a taint too. It is.
I thought that was the scrotum. What's the scrotum?
Scrotum is the sack.
Is the sack.
Gasper, maybe you really should go to that male doctor.
A lot of confusion.
A lot of confusion. It's true.
I don't like the way you described the fleshy, pushy part. The taint is bad enough to describe as it is. You made it way worse.
Did I?
Fleshy, pushy
no,
part?
I didn't know what you guys were talking about, and Katee perfectly encapsulated.
Thank you.
That part. The pushy,
fleshy part. Isn't it a place you push on a man
all
during
the time.
sex?
All I do. Yeah.
Casper has really leaned into this.
You're cracking me up.
Into this scope.
I'm just like, he doesn't, not even masturbating. He just pushes on his dick. That's it. That's all he does.
Oh my God, you guys can't see them. I'm literally crying.
Man.
All right. I wanted to talk about something I have coming up, guys. Yeah. So I have signed on to do a Star Wars cruise.
What does that mean, Katee?
So it means you, me, thousands of our closest friends stuck on a boat for 4 nights, 5 days, leaving from Florida, going to the Bahamas. You can come with us.
I would bet if they're fans of yours, they probably have already gotten Instagram ads about it.
They probably have, right? I hope you have. You guys, this is going to be a really fun thing. I'm excited. I went on one of these briefly with an ex of mine who did a cruise like this, convention style. If you've ever been to a sci-fi convention, think about that. Smaller, less people, but on a boat with like the sun and like alcohol and a pool.
Where is it going?
It's going to the Bahamas, Nassau.
Oh, nice.
I believe one of you guys are coming.
Yeah. Have you guys decided which one of you is going to be on the boat?
We're bunking. Both of us.
Yeah, bunking. Yeah.
Yeah?
Nice.
Well, you're not, because you're not only going, you're doing something else.
I'm not only going, you guys, but I am going to record a podcast episode while I am there.
Live.
So that's going to be awesome. I'm super excited. But that's what this is. There's like so many different things to do on the cruise, separate from just being on a cruise and having it be gorgeous.
Hey,
you
Katee,
can actually get to see these other
Katee,
things.
who else is on the cruise right now?
I don't know. I was trying to look it up, but I don't have my phone.
Oh,
so
well, give me my phone.
I know that my boys from Mandalorian, I believe Brendan and Latif and Simon are going to be there with me, which I'm really excited about because those guys are a real good time and we always have fun together.
Ooh, Tamira?
Tamira Morrison is going to be there. Warwick Davis is going to be there.
Let's go.
Who else is going to be there?
I've got the list right here.
Announced so far.
Yeah.
There
could be some more people though, but that's a really good group, guys.
Greg Proops I know from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, that'll be fun.
It's called Galaxy Cruise.
Cruise.
You can go to galaxycruise.com to get tickets. And also, people should know this is next year.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I should tell people
2025.
It is over the May 4th weekend of 2025. But I'm telling you this now because obviously it's cruise ship. There's not a lot of rooms. You don't have an option of staying at a hotel close by and going to the convention. This is a get your room or you get left on shore. So don't miss out. That's coming up. Super excited for that. But that's all I got. Great. So thanks for coming to hang out with me and these three guys. Keep listening, keep sending in those emails, and go rate the show. Give me 5 stars. And other than that, I'll see you guys next Tuesday. That's what's up.